The door creaked open with a groan that didn't match the cheap jingle of the bell above it. Joanna Hart stepped into the dry, fluorescent-lit air of Buckshot Armory, the gun store locals called the last place you walk in green. Her boots scraped against the rubber floor mat, cracked and dirt, stained from years of spit-out tobacco and boot drag. She wore faded jeans, patched at the knees, boots scuffed at the toes like they'd marched through gravel for miles, and a flannel shirt too big for her frame, sleeves rolled halfway, the cuffs fraying like rope ends. Her face was shadowed by the dim lighting and the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from sleepless nights, but from living too long with ghosts. Conversation slowed. Not stopped, not yet, but shifted, laced with that thin layer of smirking curiosity men get when a woman walks into their sanctuary uninvited. 5 regulars leaned against a glass counter lined with custom handguns and overpriced tactical gear. One wore Oakley's indoors. Another, a sheriff's deputy off duty, spun a set of keys around his finger like a lazy warning. Behind the counter stood a tall clerk with a beard that looked like it had swallowed his chin whole. He tapped a cleaning rod on the glass and tilted his head. "You lost, ma'am?" he asked with a smirk. "Knitting shop's down the road. I hear they just got new pink yarn in." Someone snorted. A pair of younger guys near the ammo racks chuckled louder than necessary, hoping she'd turn around embarrassed, flustered, or flinching. Joanna didn't. She didn't blink. Her eyes swept the room once, slow, measured, like she was marking exits. Then she looked at the clerk and said in a voice that had nothing soft in it, "I need to use the range." The silence that followed wasn't long, but it was heavy. The clerk raised an eyebrow and looked her over again, as if the answer was written on the mud caked to her boots. "You shoot left or right?" he asked, still playful but edging toward challenge. "Both." That got a pause, not long enough to scare anyone, but enough to make the bearded man clear his throat. He shrugged like he didn't care and pulled a clipboard from under the counter. "You sign the waiver, you pay the fee. We're not liable if you can't handle recoil," he said, pushing the paper across the glass. "Range gun rentals are on the left wall. Try not to point it at your own foot." More laughter, this time louder, confident. 2 of the younger guys made no effort to hide it, even nudging each other like this was going to be good. Joanna signed the paper with slow strokes, her hand steady. When she was done, she looked up once, her eyes not daring but unreadable. The kind of gaze you see in wild animals right before they bolt or strike. She took the worn Glock they handed her, racked it once without looking down, and walked toward the range with the same quiet as someone carrying a folded flag. They watched her go, laughing still, but already, something in their voices had started to shift. The rental Glock felt off in her hand, the grip too slick, the trigger worn in a way that made it twitchy. It had probably been fired 1,000 times by shaky hands and overconfident rookies. But Joanna didn't ask for another. She took it the way a carpenter takes a hammer, like it was just a tool, nothing sacred. One of the guys behind the glass let out a low chuckle as she turned toward the range, his voice pitched just loud enough to cut through the air. "Hope she doesn't shoot herself in the foot." A second guy muttered, "Might be the highlight of my damn week." The firing range was dim and metallic, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like gnats that never slept. The smell of burnt powder lingered thick in the air, mixing with the faint scent of gun oil and old sweat. The stalls were separated by bullet-scarred dividers, each one stained with the ghosts of past shots. Joanna stepped into one, the floor sticky beneath her boots, and laid the Glock on the ledge. She didn't glance at the others watching through the plexiglass behind her. Didn't acknowledge the phone a teenager was holding up, half pretending not to record her. She set down her bag, pulled out the magazine, and began loading rounds with slow, deliberate precision. Click. 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 Each bullet slid into place like it belonged there. Her hands moved like memory. No wasted motion, no showmanship, just control. Someone in the back yawned loudly. Joanna didn't react. She slipped the magazine into the Glock, racked the slide with a smooth pull, and looked downrange. The target was already set. 50 yards. Standard paper. Center mass printed in red. Most people barely tagged the edge at that distance. Some didn't hit at all. She raised the gun. No stance adjustment. No breath holding. Just a quiet exhale. Then came the first shot. It cracked through the air, sharp and pure. No wobble, no overcorrection. The shot landed clean, tearing straight through the red dot at the target's center. A second later, another shot. And another. 3 in quick succession. Not rushed, not slow. Just exact. The paper flinched with each hit, tight grouping, surgical, all within the space of a playing card. Behind her, the gum chewing stopped. Someone hissed through their teeth. The chuckles? Gone. The video camera? Lowered. The retired Marine at the counter leaned forward, both hands planted on the edge like he'd just seen something he hadn't in years. His voice came out dry, almost reverent. That's recon grouping. He wasn't smiling. Joanna lowered the weapon. No smirk, no pride, just the calm of someone who did what she came to do. She stepped back, removed the mag, cleared the chamber, and placed the Glock down like it had never mattered. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the buzzing lights and the distant hum of a ceiling vent. No one laughed, not anymore. The buzz of the overhead lights felt louder now, as if the whole building had gone still except for the current pulsing through the ceiling. Joanna stepped back from the firing line, her boots leaving faint scuffs on the concrete. She handed the Glock over to the range clerk without a word. His hand twitched when he took it like he wasn't sure if he was holding a gun or something heavier. Behind the counter, Reed Wallace had stopped pretending to clean the register. He hadn't moved during the shooting, not when she stepped up, not when the first shot cracked, not when the second and third followed in perfect rhythm. But now, as the laughter from earlier hung in the air like stale smoke, he reached under the counter with a slowness that didn't match his bulk. He set a weathered manila folder on the glass and opened it with fingers more careful than the moment deserved. Inside were old incident logs, training reports, clipped articles, most of them redacted to hell. He wasn't looking at the papers, not really. He was listening, because he'd heard her say something mid-drill. Just one word, a call sign. Not shouted, not explained. Just muttered under her breath as she cleared a jam faster than any hobbyist could. Rook 0. No one civilian would know it, but Reed wasn't just a store owner. Before this place, before the coffee-stained receipts and stacked crates of 308 ammo, he'd spent 15 years off the grid, not on vacation. In places without names, under missions that came without medals. His eyes flicked up, tracking Joanna as she stepped closer to the counter. She stood across from him like it meant nothing, but her posture that wasn't civilian either. He cleared his throat. "Where'd you serve?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade sliding between ribs. The young clerk next to him froze, mid-restock, his hands hovering over a box of earplugs. Joanna didn't answer. She didn't blink. Instead, she reached into the inner pocket of her oversized flannel and pulled out a card military ID, weathered by time, its edges curled like an old map. She placed it on the glass. The name had faded, half legible, but the clearance code? That still gleamed, etched in silver at the bottom, burned in deeper than the rest. Reed stared at it. His breath caught for just a second. Then he looked up at her, really looked, and saw it. The way her hands didn't fidget, the way her eyes didn't dart. That silence wasn't nerves. It was trained. He didn't ask again. Joanna reached into her bag and set something else down. Smaller, a metal box. Black, plain. No hinges, no keyhole. Just smooth, dark weight. Reed hesitated. The others leaned forward, curious now. But Reed's fingers were slow, reverent. He touched the lid like it might burn him. The top slid open with a whisper. Inside sat a single object, a coin. No denomination, no country. Its surface was midnight blue, with silver inlays forming an emblem not listed in any manual. 2 wings, a vertical line through the center. Around the edge, no motto, no date, just silence. Reed stepped back like he'd been struck. That was never issued, he whispered. Joanna said nothing. Behind her, the younger guys who'd laughed earlier didn't move. Not a cough, not a breath. One of them slowly set down his phone. The coin wasn't supposed to exist. It was whispered about in debriefing rooms, in blackout bases. Given to ghosts, not soldiers. Not for rank, not for valor, for silence. For missions that never happened. Reed's jaw tightened. His voice, when it returned, had dropped an octave. "You're not here for sport." Still, she said nothing. She just closed the box again, quiet, final, and left it on the counter, her fingers resting on the lid like she was waiting for the room to catch up. No one spoke. The sound of the range, usually constant, filled with brass clatter and muffled blasts, was gone, as if the air itself had pressed pause. The smell of gunpowder still lingered, but even that felt subdued now. A room that once buzzed with arrogance and easy laughter now stood frozen under the weight of something none of them could name but all of them felt. Joanna didn't look around. She didn't need to. Reed Wallace came out from behind the counter. He didn't rush, didn't shout, just walked with slow, deliberate steps until he stood in front of her. And then he did something. No one expected, something that cracked through the stale air like a thunderclap made of silence. He stood at attention. Not stiff, not performative, but real. No words, just respect. The clerk beside him blinked like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. One of the younger guys who had recorded her earlier, the one with the too loud laugh, fumbled with his phone like it was suddenly the wrong thing to be holding. He tucked it into his pocket with both hands. The man who had cracked the knitting joke earlier, heavy-set and smirking when she first walked in, shuffled forward. His face was red now, the smugness drained out like a slow leak. He rubbed the back of his neck and gave a shaky, almost rehearsed chuckle. "Listen, I didn't mean." Joanna turned to him, her expression still unreadable, and raised a single hand. "Save it," she said. There was no anger in her voice, no righteousness, just a quiet finality, like she was closing a door behind her. He nodded, unsure what to do with his hands, and stepped back like a scolded child. No one filled the silence after that. No one dared. Joanna reached out and lifted the small black box from the counter, tucking it back into her worn bag. The flap clicked shut softly, barely audible. She adjusted the strap over her shoulder and turned toward the door. The bell jingled again as she pushed it open. That same bell that once signaled the punchline to a room full of jokes now rang like a gavel. No one laughed. No one moved. The door eased shut behind her, and through the glass, they watched her walk. Just a woman in faded jeans and boots with too many miles. But now, her presence filled more space than anyone inside the store. Reed didn't sit back down. He just stared at the door, still standing at ease, the ghost of something heavy pressing into his chest. His lips parted like he was talking to himself, or maybe to whatever god still bothered to listen to men like him. "They said she disappeared after Operation Frostline," he murmured. Then, quieter, still almost like a prayer, "They were wrong."